There is a story most Americans grow up believing so completely that renting is throwing money away. Buying a home is building equity. Homeownership is the foundation of financial security, and the sooner you buy, the better off you will be. This story is repeated by parents, repeated by financial advisors, repeated by every real estate agent who has ever handed someone a pen at a closing table. It is so deeply embedded in American financial culture that most people never stop to run the actual numbers. And that is exactly what the people who profit from your home purchase are counting on. Because when you run the actual numbers, not the emotional numbers, not the cultural numbers, the real mathematical numbers, the story starts looking very different. Not for everyone, not in every market, not under every set of circumstances, but for millions of Americans right now, in the current environment, the decision to buy a home instead of renting and investing the difference is quietly producing one of the most expensive financial outcomes of their entire lives. And almost nobody is talking about it in plain language. Everything on this channel, every number, every framework, every mistake in one place. 9 minutes to read, 30 years of impact. Most people watch financial content for years and still don't know what to actually do next, not because the information wasn't good, because nobody ever gave them the complete system, the sequence, the automation, the framework, all in one place. Until now. 5 chapters. Chapter 1, the 2 modes of money and exactly how to switch from one to the other. Chapter 2, the correct sequence for building wealth and why doing right things in the wrong order costs most people hundreds of thousands of dollars. Chapter 3, the 10 mistakes that turn $1.1 million into $430,000 without a single obviously bad decision. Chapter 4, the 5 big decisions where the real money is won and lost. Chapter 5, the complete automated wealth machine you set up once and run for 30 years. It is called the quiet math. It costs $3, it takes 9 minutes to read, and it contains everything you need to build a wealth machine that runs without you, and nothing you don't. No fluff, no filler, no generic advice, just the system. Link is in the description right now. If you have watched even one video on this channel and thought, I need to actually do something about this, this is what you do. The quiet math. Just $3, 9 minutes, 30 years of compounding. Link in bio. The math is waiting. Start reading. My name is Sam. And I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and the specific moments where conventional wisdom and mathematical reality diverge so dramatically that following the conventional wisdom costs people hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a lifetime. If you want to understand the real math behind one of the biggest financial decisions most Americans will ever make, instead of just being told what you are supposed to do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you think about this. Now, before anyone sends me angry comments about how they love their home and homeownership is about more than money, I agree with you completely. There are real non-financial reasons to buy a home. Stability, community, the ability to renovate and make a space your own, the feeling of ownership and permanence. These are real and valid, and I am not dismissing any of them. What I am doing today is separating the emotional case for homeownership from the financial case, because most Americans have been told these two things are the same thing. They are not, and confusing them has cost millions of people hundreds of thousands of dollars they never knew they were losing. Let's start with the myth that renting is throwing money away. You have heard this your entire life. Every dollar you pay in rent disappears into your landlord's pocket, and you have nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, every dollar you pay toward a mortgage builds equity in an asset you own. This sounds completely logical. It is also almost entirely wrong. Here is what the rent is throwing money away argument conveniently ignores. When you buy a home, you are also throwing money away, just at different things. Property taxes on a median American home currently run approximately $3,000 to $5,000 per year, depending on your state. Homeowners insurance runs $1,500 to $2,000 annually. Maintenance and repairs, the stuff nobody mentions when they tell you to buy, runs approximately 1% of the home's value per year on average. On a $400,000 home, that is $4,000 per year in maintenance costs before you have fixed a single thing. Then there is mortgage interest. In the early years of a 30-year mortgage, the vast majority of your monthly payment is interest, not principal. On a $320,000 mortgage at 7% interest, your first monthly payment of approximately $2,129 splits into roughly $1,867 of interest and only $262 of actual equity building. You are paying $2,129 a month and building $262 in equity. The rest is going somewhere that is not your net worth. When you add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and the interest portion of the mortgage payment together, the average homeowner in a median-priced market is spending $2,500 to $3,500 per month on costs that build zero equity. The renter throwing money away narrative looks considerably more complicated when you run those numbers honestly. But let's go deeper, because the hidden costs are only half the story. The other half is opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is the concept that makes the housing math look genuinely alarming once you understand it. When you buy a median-priced American home today, you need a down payment. At the current median home price of approximately $420,000, a 20% down payment is $84,000. That $84,000 does not go into your home equity in a way that compounds. It goes into your home. And your home, despite what most Americans believe, is not a particularly good investment when measured against the alternative. The S&P 500 has returned an average of approximately 10% annually over long periods. The average American home has appreciated at approximately 4% annually over the same period. Before accounting for inflation, before accounting for the costs we just discussed, before accounting for anything, the raw appreciation rate of housing is less than half the long-term return of a simple index fund. Which means that $84,000 down payment sitting in a home instead of an index fund is not just earning a lower return, it is earning a dramatically lower return, while also generating ongoing costs that reduce the effective return even further. Here is what that $84,000 actually does in an index fund over 30 years at 10% annual returns. It becomes approximately $1,470,000. $1.47 million from a single down payment invested at closing instead of handed to a seller. Your home would need to appreciate from $420,000 to $1,470,000, a 250% increase just for the down payment opportunity cost to break even. And that calculation doesn't even account for the $3,000 to $5,000 in annual property taxes, the $1,500 to $2,000 in annual insurance, the $4,000 per year in maintenance, or the roughly $150,000 to $200,000 in total interest you will pay on a 30-year mortgage at current rates. When you add all of those costs together and compare them against the actual appreciation of the home minus what a comparable rental would have cost you over the same period, the financial case for homeownership in most current American markets is significantly weaker than the cultural narrative suggests. Now, here is where most people push back and say, but what about building equity? You own something at the end. And this is true. After 30 years of mortgage payments, you own a home outright. But let's look at what you actually spent to get there. On a $420,000 home with a $336,000 mortgage at 7% interest over 30 years, your total payments add up to approximately $767,000, plus your $84,000 down payment, plus approximately $150,000 in property taxes over 30 years, plus approximately $60,000 in insurance over 30 years, plus approximately $120,000 in maintenance over 30 years. Your all-in cost for that home over 30 years is approximately $1,181,000 for an asset that at 4% annual appreciation is worth approximately $1,364,000 at the end. Your net gain, the value of the home minus what you spent to own it, is approximately $183,000 over 30 years. Meanwhile, the renter who invested the down payment plus the monthly difference between the mortgage payment and their rent payment into an index fund over the same period, assuming a $1,500 monthly rent versus a $2,129 mortgage payment, has that $84,000 compounding plus $629 per month in additional investment contributions for 30 years. At 10% annual returns, that portfolio is worth approximately $2,100,000. The renter who invested the difference doesn't just outperform the homeowner, they outperform the homeowner by approximately $736,000. Now, I need to pause here because this is the point where this analysis gets genuinely complicated, and I want to be honest about that complexity. The rent versus buy calculation is not the same in every market. In cities where rent is extremely high relative to home prices, the calculation shifts in favor of buying. In markets where home appreciation has dramatically outpaced the national average, certain parts of California, New York, and other high-demand metros over the last 20 years, buying has produced returns that rival or exceed index fund investing. The analysis also changes significantly based on how long you plan to stay. The transaction costs of buying and selling a home, agent commissions, closing costs, transfer taxes, run approximately 8% to 10% of the home's value. On a $420,000 home, that is $33,000 to $42,000 in transaction costs alone. If you buy and sell within 5 years, those transaction costs alone almost certainly make renting the better financial decision regardless of appreciation. The conventional wisdom of buying whenever you can is not wrong for everyone. It is wrong for millions of people who are applying it in situations where the math clearly favors a different outcome.
There is also a behavioral element to this that most financial analysis ignores completely. Homeownership forces a form of savings that many people would not maintain voluntarily. Every mortgage payment builds some equity, even if the early payments are mostly interest. For people who would not otherwise invest the difference between their rent and a mortgage payment, homeownership can produce a better financial outcome than renting simply because it creates an enforced savings mechanism. The person who would rent for $1,500 and spend the extra $629 instead of investing it is better off buying the home than renting and spending. The math only favors renting and investing if the investing actually happens, and for many Americans it does not, which is why the financial advice to rent and invest the difference requires a specific kind of financial discipline that not everyone has and that financial advisors are sometimes reluctant to assume their clients possess.
But here is the part that genuinely concerns me about the current American housing market and the way most people are approaching this decision right now. Mortgage rates are significantly higher than the historical averages most homeownership financial models were built on. At 7% interest, a $336,000 mortgage costs $2,129 per month. The same mortgage at the 3.5% rates available in 2021 cost $1,509 per month. That $620 monthly difference is $7,440 per year in additional interest costs that make the rent versus buy calculation dramatically less favorable for buyers entering the market today compared to buyers who entered in 2020 or 2021. The people who tell you homeownership always builds wealth were often right for buyers who locked in sub-4% mortgages a decade ago. They are applying math that made sense in a different interest rate environment to a market where the numbers tell a very different story.
So what does this actually mean for you making a real decision in the real world right now? Here is the framework I would use. If you plan to stay in the same location for at least 7 to 10 years, if you are buying in a market where the price-to-rent ratio makes economic sense, if you have a stable income that can absorb the maintenance costs and unexpected expenses of homeownership without disrupting your investment contributions, and if the mortgage payment does not require you to stop investing in order to afford it, then buying can be a reasonable financial decision alongside your investment strategy. But if you are buying primarily because you have been told that renting is throwing money away, if you are stretching to afford the payment and planning to cut investment contributions to make it work, if you might need to move within 5 years, or if you are in a high price-to-rent ratio market where comparable rents are dramatically lower than comparable mortgage payments, the math is telling you something that the cultural narrative around homeownership is actively drowning out. The home will not automatically make you wealthy. The index fund almost certainly will. And the decision about which one deserves your money right now is worth making with actual numbers rather than inherited assumptions about what responsible adults are supposed to do. The most expensive financial decisions in most people's lives are not the ones that feel like gambles. They are the ones that feel so obviously correct that nobody ever stops to run the numbers. Homeownership is the single best example of that dynamic in American financial life. Run the numbers, all of them, and then decide. Do subscribe for more videos.